I moved into my house on a quiet autumn afternoon, unloading boxes and trying to ignore the unsettling stillness inside. The house had been empty for years before I bought it, and there was something about the silence that felt unnatural. The air was thick with dust, and the wooden floors groaned beneath my every step. That first night, as I lay in bed exhausted from unpacking, I heard it. The distant sound of a dog barking. It was faint, barely audible over the rustling trees outside. I figured a neighbor's dog must have been left out for the night and thought little of it. But as the days passed, the barking didn't stop. It grew more persistent, always just on the edge of my hearing. Sometimes it was a single, sharp bark. Other times, it was a low, drawn-out howl that sent shivers down my spine. I started paying closer attention. Every time I heard the barking, I would look out my windows, searching for the source. But there was never a dog in sight. The yard was empty, the street was still, even the leaves barely stirred. One evening, just before dusk, the barking came again, this time closer. I stepped outside, the cool air wrapping around me as I scanned the yard. The sky was streaked with the last remnants of daylight, casting long shadows across the grass. That's when I saw it. A large white dog sat at the far end of the property, near the old wooden fence. The dog didn't move. It simply stared at me, its dark eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Hey, buddy," I called softly, taking a cautious step forward. The dog stood, its movements smooth and silent. Without a sound, it turned and trotted toward the back corner of the yard, where a cluster of trees cast deep shadows over the grass. I followed, my heartbeat quickening. When I got closer, the dog paused and turned to face me again. For a moment, we simply watched each other. Then, slowly, its tail gave the smallest of wags, gentle, almost hesitant, like a silent acknowledgement. It wasn't excitement, nor was it fear. It felt like recognition, as if, in that brief moment, it had accepted my presence, and then it was gone. There was nowhere for it to have gone. Not through the fence, not behind a tree. It had simply vanished. That night, I couldn't shake the unease curling in my stomach. I barely slept, jolted awake by the phantom barking that now seemed to echo inside the house itself. The next morning, I decided to ask my neighbor, an elderly woman who had lived in the area for decades. "Oh," she said, nodding knowingly. "You saw the shepherd, didn't you?" I hesitated. "The white dog?" She smiled sadly. "That house used to belong to an old couple, the Parkers, sweet folks. They had a beautiful white shepherd, smart as a whip, always watching over them. When they passed, the dog stayed, waiting for them to come home." She sighed. Poor thing wouldn't leave the porch even when the house was empty. One winter it just faded away. A chill ran down my spine. "So, people have seen it before?" I asked. She nodded. "Every now and then, not everyone, just certain people. I guess he's still looking after the place." That night, as I settled into bed, I heard the barking again, closer this time, right outside my window. But now, instead of fear, I felt something else. Not every spirit lingers with malice. Some remain out of loyalty. Even in death, the watchdog still stood guard,